Baby. All right, here we go. And welcome to the Acid for Squares podcast. I'm your host, Cody Blue.
I'm Tanya Dahl, and today we have our beautiful, multi-talented friend, Serena DC, with us in the house. Thank you so much for being here, Serena. It's such an honor to have you in.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and to be in the hot seat.
Yes.
I've directed some stuff in this amazing space, but I've never been like the center of attention. So
yes,
I'm going to lap it up now.
I have to say, you've been a fairy godmother for both of us as we like transition from conventional Hollywood into this space.
Yeah.
Thank you for everything you do and have done and for being on. Like,
of course.
You're really like, seriously, you have no idea how much this woman supports us in so many different ways. And just for those of you that do not know the legend, that is Serena DC. Let me tell you, okay? She is an award-winning filmmaker. She's an investigative journalist, and she's just an overall powerhouse. She has her own streaming platform, Spark, that will be coming out on 11/11, which will be a guy with attitude. To even put it in the same title, the same sentence as Guy would be doing it disservice. But
and she's also an award-winning filmmaker. Her film won Cannes.
yeah, she just won Cannes.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Congratulations, by the way. It's huge.
And I mean, so this is sort of the thing, because I know you got nominated for an Emmy and I know you really transition into this space of the unknown, the paranormal, the whatever you want to call this space. And a lot of times when we interview and talk to people that have made this leap, they have some sort of experience, something that happened to them that made them say, I have to dedicate my time and energy into exploring this side of existence. So do you have sort of an inciting incident, a catalyst?
Yeah, I'll discuss it with you. But first, I just want to say that I view this world as abnormal, and I view the world that we work in as normal. You know, I think the weird shit seems to happen in the baseline reality that we all kind of exist in at the moment. I think that all three of us here find comfort in the abnormal.
The strange, yeah.
Right?
It feels more at home for sure because it feels more real.
Because it is.
Yeah.
Okay, let me tell you my story. It's really weird. So here we go. So I'm in lockdown. We're all in lockdown. It's 2020. Always really been interested in UFOs and aliens and the paranormal and anything occult. Used to dabble in witchcraft when I was in high school.
As one does.
As one does, the dark arts. But no matter how many times I went to places where you would allegedly see UFOs, like I went to Area 51 and out in the middle of the desert and to the darkest skies in the world, and I'm always looking up and I never saw anything. Hours I would spend looking at the stars and no, satellite. So many times. And then anyway, I'm sitting there in lockdown and I watched this movie called Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind by this director I'd never heard of and by this host, Dr. Stephen Greer, that I'd never heard of before either. And in this movie, it basically showed you that there was a way that you could actually initiate contact with extraterrestrials yourself and get UFOs to appear in the sky. So I'm like, holy fucking shit, this looks amazing. So I took my partner at the time, Evan, and we went out to like a really dark sky kind of place in the middle of Melbourne in Australia. And I did it. We stood there in the middle of the night, we closed our eyes, and I did this like Google Earth kind of reverse search. It's basically saying this is where we are in the universe, honing down to the earth, honing down to the country, honing down to the state, honing down to exactly where we were. Anyway, at the end of it, I'm like, and here we are. And I open my eyes and Evan opens his eyes and we look at each other and we start laughing because we're just like, wow, two douches standing in the middle of a fucking field in the middle of the night, conjuring up aliens. And then we saw the most prolific, sick, undeniable UFO sighting that has eyeballs I've ever seen. Wow. So out from the left of us came this huge sheet of plasma. It just looked like metal, but, you know, plasma liquid kind of like metallic, huge, like to me, it felt like kind of this big, and it just snaked its way across the sky. And it was just massive, the darkest sky ever. There's no lights. We're in the middle of the countryside, and it just did its fucking thing.
How close was it to you?
Maybe like 100 meters away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
For the record, watch the same doc, download the same app.
Yeah.
Did CE5, the two of us as well. Same exact experience.
Crazy
Same
stuff.
exact experience.
Same exact
It's crazy, right? So anyway, see this thing. And now we would, like, our minds were just blown. Like, we knew that there was no way, there was nothing that could even make something that looked like that, let alone the fact that we were just in the middle of the boonies, middle of nowhere, right? So finally, I had proof that there was extraterrestrial life, my own proof. So lucky for me, because I'm in the TV industry, I've got a blue tick on Instagram. And I just brought out this talk show called Hollywood Disclosure, where I interviewed celebrities, because I was really into the Hollywood world, interviewed celebrities about personal transformation experiences. So I go to Dr. Stephen Greer's Instagram page, and I think I'm just going to DM him. Fuck it. Let's see if he'll reply. So I reached out and I'm like, hey, saw your movie, it's amazing. Love to make a documentary with you, blah, 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 blah. Send the message, expecting it to go into general, but all of a sudden it's seen. And I'm like, how is that even possible? Because, if you message celebrities, it just goes into general. Anyone that messages me, into general, right? So I go and I look at his followers. He's got 41 followers, and he was following me.
What?
Whoa.
He was a fan of the show.
Oh my God.
Cut a long story short, we hopped on a call the next day, talked for 3 hours. This guy becomes my best friend. He invites me to his house. I fly over to Virginia and meet him, and we make our first movie together, which was called Contact, the CE5 experience, and the rest is history. Wow. I was officially down the rabbit hole.
Has it just gotten stranger since the CE5?
So I'm a really big believer that once you put the call out to the universe, the call is out there, and that message that you've put out there is infinite. So just because one being from one planet or star system saw it and appeared at that time, that didn't mean that was the end. That message that was put out to the whole universe and all beings and all planets and all dimensions is still out there right now.
It's a really interesting way to think about it.
Still out
there
right now. And so I see stuff all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Same. So this is an interesting phenomenon. So everyone's had the experience of learning a word they did not know, they've never heard. Mm-hmm. What does that word mean? And then all of a sudden they hear it, 10 times that week, right? You buy a new car. Wow, that's a nice car. I've never seen that. Wow, I'm going to get a car. And then you see it everywhere.
The reticular
activation system. Exactly.
Yep,
exactly.
Right.
The RAS.
Yep.
So the RAS, it's a part of the brain that until you willingly invite the thing into your reality, your brain will filter it out.
Correct.
And this is exactly, you just said the neuroscience of the phenomenon itself. And we like to kind of jokingly talk about this almost as if it's a free will mechanism. Anyone that discusses or the paranormal or the spiritual, you understand the paradox of both determinism and free will, especially when it comes to UAPs, the phenomenon,
right.
The protocol they use. It's all about free will, right? That's why they don't just make their presence known. They sort of just like breadcrumb us into reaching back out, right? That's why it's on us to reach back out to them. I can't believe you knew the RAS. I say this a lot.
Of course
no one
does.
ever.
The reticular activation system is just unbelievable. And I want to draw your attention now to something that we call oneness.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm sure you've all heard of, the concept before, and that's that we are all one, that our consciousness is all one, and it's all just been split up into 8 billion people on this planet, and then 8 gazillion, trillion to all the planets and all the species and everything like that.
Yes.
And so I love that you know what it is. I believe that we activate the oneness consciousness's reticular activation system when we put that message out.
Yes.
Right? So these messages are out there and they're being amplified. And the more people that are sending out these messages, the more that they're circulating around and the more that we're normalizing to oneness, that we're ready to connect on a larger scale. And that's why you're having more people having more sightings. And that's why there's more abduction experiences happening every single day and contactee experiences. There's just this ripple effect.
Do you think that we would be able to handle having actual contact, like the majority of people having contact with UFOs, whether it's in the sky or actually like telepathically or anything like that? What do you think the reaction would be to the majority of people if this happened?
So I just finished a movie called Catastrophic Disclosure with Michael Mazzola, by the way, who directed Close Encounters.
Great name.
Isn't it crazy how everything just kind of goes full circle?
Yep.
So, and Catastrophic Disclosure is this term that's being tossed around in Washington right now in government circles. Basically, the government believe that if the whole world were told all of the information that they have right now about the fact that we've been visited before and that will be visited again, it would be what they call catastrophic disclosure. That the disclosure would be so great that the human mind would not be able to comprehend it. There would be anger toward our government, and the government worry that there'll be an uprising, that half of the people on this planet will be so furious that they weren't told about the true origins of humanity.
Well, I mean,
you know,
there's a reason for that.
That they could overthrow the government. And it's not a wild thing to be afraid of, because governments have been overthrown before.
Yeah.
You know, the government's small, the people are big. It's not that hard. So that is the government's perception, and that's their excuse in Washington for why they're not giving us all of the information all at once. They're drip feeding us this information by showing us little things like the tic-tac craft in the aerial videos that we've all seen, or allowing David Grush to seed some information to the public. But when we made this movie, Catastrophic Disclosure, we wanted to talk to thought leaders, theologians, religious leaders, people like that, because we wanted to hear what they felt. And for the most part, they believe that humanity will be fine when we're told. We will all accept it. We will all be fine. I have a degree in psychology, and in psychology, when you meet somebody that's really stressed, going through like a psychotic break, you try and figure out what they're stressed out about, and then you try and normalize it. You try and make them realize that there's so many other people around the world that are feeling how they feel too, that how they feel is okay and acceptable. It tends to calm people down. Once you can accept things, then you can integrate them, and then you can let them go. I believe that all of humanity has been going through their own form of normalization, because we're seeing craft all the time. We're hearing our government acknowledge that they exist. For the most part, people believe that we're not alone, right? We've seen the craft, we've seen the movies, we've seen the government. So when they come that day, we're all going to freak out. Holy fucking shit, they're here, right? Yeah. And then we'll be cool. Because it's not like it's something particularly new.
So this is interesting, because talking about catastrophic disclosure, there was two things that you just said right there. One was around how we're able to handle and integrate this information, right? And which I feel like that's sort of been kind of the conversation for a long time. It's, well, is humanity really ready? If the government's hiding it, that's why they're hiding it. The other hand is that this is the smoking gun of truly how corrupt the government is, and how, I guess, what we would call a satellite arm of the government that has no oversight, no democratic, it's not democratically appointed people. It's a breakaway arm of the government that has been controlling this information, right?
Right.
Do you think, is it more that we can't handle it, or is it more that the level of corruption would essentially completely dissolve the people's faith in the institutions and the authoritarian bodies that, are currently running it?
I like to use the analogy, like you meet somebody at a bar, right? Never met them before. You think they're going to be a single serve friend. So you inflate like who you are as a person. Yeah, I'm a fashion designer or something like that, right? Even though you're not. You're just trying to be cool, having some drinks. Hopefully you're going to get laid that night, and then you're never going to see him again, right? So you create this fake persona. The night happens, you do get laid, it was great, and it's over, right? 3 weeks later, you're at work and they walk in and they're the new employee. So now all of a sudden you've got a choice. Do I maintain this lie and enjoy a friendship with this person and keep my integrity and my stature, or do I tell them the truth? And if I do tell them the truth, how are they going to react? Well, they're going to think I'm an idiot and a fraud. Are they going to tell people about it? Then everyone will know. Then it's just going to stockpile, and everyone will hate me and the whole world will implode, right? And I believe that that's what's happening in our government right now. I don't think that the politicians today, if they were given this information, would necessarily hide it if it was fresh. But they're having to perpetuate this lie, a lie that I'm sure happened way before the 1940s, but that really kind of was solidified in the 1940s with Roswell and the atomic bomb and everything that happened,
exactly.
And so, but you do get caught in that lie trap. This just happens to be the biggest fucking lie that was ever told.
Right.
But how do you get out of that? How do they get out of that? Like, how would you feel if Donald Trump just said, hey, guess what? We've been lying.
I feel like radical honesty, though, is really the only way to do anything. And by having vulnerability and being humble and really expressing that, like, the reasons why you did it and that you're sorry and whatever, I feel like that's the only way to truly connect with the rest of the world. And so if our politicians did that, we would stop seeing them as these, like, assholes who are hiding stuff from us.
Yeah.
Instead, we will see them as people who are flawed and be like, okay, maybe let's all work on this together and figure this out now that everyone's being vulnerable and honest.
I do agree with that. And that's something I know we practice in our relationship. Like, we'll tell sort of like the ugly, most vulnerable, honest truth of it to be like, look, at least you know I'm not lying because I'm telling you everything. And I just want you to know that I'm telling you everything and my intentions are pure.
Well, they need to. I mean, like, I sat down when I was making that film, I sat down with Danny Sheehan. Danny Sheehan is a human rights lawyer. He was the lawyer that was protecting everybody involved with Project Blue Book. So he's at the epicenter of all of this stuff right in Washington, D.C. When I sat down with him and we talked about it, I said to him, because he told me there's heaps of information. There's footage, there's bodies, there's recovered craft, you name it. There's an enormous cache of proof that we are not alone. Not a tiny bit, an enormous, undeniable amount. He's seen it, which drives me crazy because he's bound by confidentiality agreements and can't tell us exactly what he's seen, but he's seen it all. The most staunch, intelligent, highly respected human rights lawyer is telling me, sitting there and telling me, I've seen it. Seen craft, seen bodies, seen it all, right? It's all there. But they can't seem to get over this controlled disclosure. Like, the government are just still so locked down. What he's saying is that at the moment they're trying to form a committee of people. Some will be experts in certain areas. Others will just be normal civilians. A committee of 9 people. Yeah. Those 9 people will sit on a panel and they'll be shown all of the information. And together, these humans, normal civilians are going to work out a way that we can have this information delivered to us, because really it's a race against time. Yeah. The extraterrestrials are going to make their presence known very soon. I mean, they're already doing it, but one of these days they're just going to come out. And when they do, if the government hasn't disclosed, there will be riots in the streets.
Yeah. Well, this is really interesting because it's not about the UAP, UFO, alien disclosure that is so much of the problem as it is that it's intrinsically linked to the deep state. And I really try to avoid conspiratorial talk and thought, especially in the current climate around information, the ubiquity of information, how things are twisted and distorted for narrative, editorialization. But it's very simple. They're pretty much the advent of the CIA, right? We all know this. The advent of the CIA was around creating the atomic bomb, and that institution is that institution of secrecy is what inherited the reverse engineering, I don't even know what you call it, like agency for crash retrieval and all of that. So that is essentially what comes out with this, that there is something that essentially has been pulling the strings around the war machine, and and especially when when the fact is that if this is real, which we know this to be, we've all seen enough here and experienced enough here, that it really could heal the energy crisis. It could transform medicine. Right. I mean, it would change, the geopolitical landscape forever. I mean, it would really change. It would crumble religious institutions. So, I mean, this is really the fascinating thing about this conversation is it's not even so much about the UFOs, the UAPs. It's really about the secrecy and the corruption within the government, and that's kind of motivating this.
So something that was really important to me when I decided to pivot out of Hollywood and into this world was I looked at the UFO content that was out there, and I felt that there were 2 sort of subgroups. Subgroup number 1 was conspiracy theories, the government's lied to us, fight the power, uncover the truth, blah, 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 right? And that seemed to focus on information that's been gathered over the last 80 years, from 1940 to today, 84 years, whatever it is. And that was that world, right? That's the one we've just been talking about. And then there's the other world. And the other world was, how fucking magical is it that there's an awakening happening right now, and that human beings like you and I are starting to reach out to the stars and have communication with extraterrestrial beings, and really reconnect with literally our brothers and sisters from the galaxy and from the universe, right? And so I was like, do I want to go down that route, or do I want to go down the other? And so I chose magic. Yep. Right? Why?
Always choose magic.
Always choose magic, right? It's the unicorn way. Yeah. Why? One, couldn't give a shit about the government, boring, snooze fest, right? But also, for me, it's like, I mean, like recorded history, even recorded history, we've got 100,000 years of proof of human life, right? And then beyond that and beyond that and beyond that, we've been here for eons, yeah? So I'm not really interested in what happened in 80 years, you know?
Yeah.
A couple of craft crashed, it was hidden, a couple of bodies maybe, you know, like a big fucking deal. There's like a whole heap of other stuff happening right now, you know?
Well,
I wanted to lean into that.
This is as one should,
like that.
and I feel like that's exactly what
Yeah.
what really unites us on the thinking. Because here's the thing, we kind of, it's funny, we have this conversation a lot, and it's a lot of like when contact happens, the protocols have been happening.
Yeah.
So, and this is one of the things we wanted to talk about today, is there's several ways in which contact has already begun. Contact is not going to come through the government. I mean, that's just when they're going to release the information. It is on an individual level.
It's historical data that's going to piss us off and give us some form of enlightenment.
Right.
But that's pretty much it, right? Like,
Well, the thing is that today we call them contactees, experiencers, abductees. In the past, you would call these people mystics, channels, sages, druids, soothsayers, oracles, shamans. That is what they were known as. And all of them were known as heretics and have been essentially blighted and destroyed and killed and suppressed
Burned.
by the major religious institutions. So what we're actually here to do, when you say magic and we say fuck the government, do we really give a shit what they say?
Yeah.
We're talking about a coming home to what this is. And we even know the famous scientist Gary Nolan, who has just come out and saying that I'll be bad with the science, but there's a bundle of nerves found in the brains that do not exist in other people. The people with these bundle of nerves are more prone to experiences themselves, right?
Any sort of paranormal experience.
Right, any paranormal experience, which we have come to believe there is a substrate here that is a sort of a connective tissue between UAPs and ghosts and all of that.
oh, there 100% is.
100%.
100.
I digress. To merge the old world of magic and to merge the new world of experience and abductees and all of that, to essentially come to terms with how contact has already begun. That's really what we were interested in talking to you about.
Yeah.
Because you've done so much research in the space, you've made so many movies. Can you speak to what is scientifically classified as the alien abduction syndrome at the current moment?
Yeah.
What have you found?
And I absolutely hate that that's what it's being called. It's just ridiculous because it's just regular people encountering other beings, you know? That's not a syndrome. It's a encounter. It's a meeting. Okay, let me talk a little bit about abductees. They don't like to be called that for the most part. So there's two groups here of people that have had face-to-face contact with extraterrestrial beings. One call themselves contactees. The other call themselves abductees. I'm going to throw it at you. Why do you think that there's a difference between the two?
Fear and love, curiosity and fear.
Ooh, interesting. The experience itself of shifting your dimension and reality feels like you are being taken. It feels against your will. The contactee nomenclature is essentially they are understanding that they are a participant in the experience.
Which usually comes later, though. If people feel like an abductee in the beginning, but then later they're realizing they're a contactee and maybe they, like you said, had an agreement before.
And this is obviously, we'll get into this in this conversation, but I've gone on that journey of viewing it through fear to viewing it as an amazing
Same.
thing. Yeah.
Same.
So, okay, that makes sense.
It's funny, isn't it? Like hindsight's so 20/20. Like now, and I'll talk about my experience later, but I wish to God I'd leaned into it more, you know, like and not fought it and just let it happen. But anyway, okay. So
Same.
first of all, let me talk a little bit about the experience that I've had with experiences. So I've interviewed probably around 400 to 500 different people that have said to have had face-to-face contact or very, very strong telepathic contact with extraterrestrial beings. There are two different types. Some call themselves abductees, some call themselves contactees. An abductee is somebody that has woken up in the middle of the night normally and been and found themselves being removed from their home or removed from wherever they happen to be. They're paralyzed, so they're unable to move. They're afraid. They're using their mind to say, where am I going? What are you doing? Where are you taking me? And they're hearing a very sort of stern voice saying, relax, calm down. We're not going to harm you, but not answering any of their questions.
Just kind of emotionless and
that's right.
Logical.
They normally wake up the next day feeling as though something's not right. So feeling physically wrong, feeling very like they're coming off drugs and things like that, having missing time. And then after they go and spend some time with a hypnotherapist or something like that, they start to regain some of the memories that they lost. And they all have very similar experiences of being up in a craft, being greeted by various species, all at once. It appears that we're the only pariahs that just like hanging out our own little human clique. All the rest of them tend to like all hang out together. And for the most part, they either have had experiments done on them. Well, no, I'm going to take that back. That's a lie. They've either had procedures done on them where objects have been inserted into them or tissue has been removed from them, sometimes blood, sometimes saliva, sometimes urine, sometimes feces. Let's just get them all out.
Oh, wow.
Seemingly because some diagnostics want to be done on the materials that are taken from them, okay? And then the other group of people in the abduction category are people that say that they've been part of a hybrid program, so that they have felt sperm, eggs, other reproductive organs and materials being taken from them. And then over the course of many years, they've been able to go back onto craft and see their hybrid children from being babies to being toddlers all the way up until being adults, and they all speak of having being encouraged by the extraterrestrial beings to have a relationship with these hybrid children. So that's one group.
Wow.
And that group, the abductees, are usually pretty pissed off by the whole scenario. They're not leaning into the magic. They're not leaning into the wonder. They feel very abused,
Violated. Yeah.
very violated, and unfortunately for them, it has spilled over into their everyday lives, just like I would feel if I was raped or if I had been impregnated and my baby was taken from me. Traumatized as fuck, right? And unfortunately, it impacts their life in a really negative way. I've met people that have had amazing careers and their careers have completely disintegrated after these experiences started happening, just from a PTSD standpoint. It's just been too hard for them. So that's one subset. The other group are what they call the contactees. So you guys probably know a few contactees because a lot of them have chosen to like really be defined by this. Abductees tend to hide in the shadows. Contactees tend to want to spread the message. So Caroline Corey, as an example, we all know her, so I'll bring her up. She's a contactee. These are people that have had face-to-face contact with beings, but they've been friendly. They've been relaxed. There is an exchange of knowledge, high-level knowledge. There is an alteration of the human DNA, enabling these people to have sixth senses and seventh and eighth senses, enabling them to travel in time, travel through dimensions, also just enabling them to have tools that they can use to help humanity to heal. They call themselves contactees because a lot of the time they're not taken into craft. A lot of the time the work that is done with them and on them is just wherever they're at in their rooms. Caroline does hypnotic regression with you and takes you back through past lives to where you were extraterrestrial. And reconnects you with extraterrestrial beings. She can channel and figure out all of the issues and the problems that you're having and actually heal them using sixth, seventh, eighth senses. So that's the difference between the two. What I'm learning, what has been the most profound thing for me with this whole experience is that there's not one species or two or three. There's so many. Like billions, obviously, but there's about 1,000 that they chronicle as saying are coming here and seeing us. But there seems to be 4 or 5 that tend to show up together and with more prevalence. Can you guess who they are?
Let me guess. It's the mantis beings,
Yes.
the grays, and then the tall blue beings. And I'm trying to go off of what we've experienced.
And the short
Oh,
grays.
but also insectoids. But I guess
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
with the
Similar.
mantis would be similar.
Yeah.
What are the other ones?
So reptilian,
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, obviously that's a big one. And then this little blues, but they're completely different because the blues you're talking about are kind of like Bashar's people, the Essassani people that are sort of humanoid, right?
The ones that we've seen have been like tall, thin, and they look very ET looking.
ET
Yeah.
looking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So because this is, I mean, this is really interesting because we've never had it broken down so cleanly into abductees and contactees. It really helps us because I guess we're both contactees.
Yeah.
And
see how you've defined it now. You know,
Yeah.
you've looked at the fact that there's these two different groups, and you found that that's where you reside.
yeah, and
Yeah,
they
and
do,
it is different,
But
and they're not the same.
But we've also experienced the procedures.
yeah. we've been on
So
the
we have
table and-
not been lifted out of our room or something like that, but we've definitely had experiences
it's
where
contact.
we are
contact.
having physical procedures done.
Right.
Yeah, but and that's the thing though, is like, so typically our personal experiences and our experiences are always in the context of a ceremonial space, spiritual.
Well, you're inviting it in almost.
Yeah,
Yes.
and we try to be. The more we train and the more we learn, we really try to what we call thin the channel, which is make sure we are being very
Specific about who we're calling in or
Yeah,
what we're
that it's
calling in, not just
divine.
like everyone.
yeah.
Which is so important.
Yeah.
And I feel like when in the beginning we were just like gunslingers, we were just like, because we're like, we're
If anybody's out there, anybody at all,
dude, I know it was a big transition for us to be like,
was.
no, we're thinning the channel.
Took a couple of years.
oh, me too.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Same thing.
Well,
Yeah.
so it's always been for healing, but the healing is directly corresponds. It's always like frequency and a lot of the healing is removing blockages, and on the other side of the blockages are sort of some semblance of extrasensory perception.
Right.
I would say it's, for me personally, it's a heightened empathy. It's experienced by me in a way that I will experience other people's pain, not like, oh, I feel you have a pain right there. I will have it as if it's myself. And for a
Right.
long time, I just thought it was me, like, oh, I got this pain or my heart. But I started to realize through doing ceremonial work that, oh no, I just am experiencing that person's thing as if it's my own, which can be helpful when we do ceremonies because we
helpful.
know what's in the container, as we would call it, right?
Right.
But then the
Well,
other,
it helps you to be more cohesive as well.
yeah,
And have that kind of like hive mind. But what I believe is happening is, with Dr. Stephen Greer, with his protocols for CE5, I don't know how much you've delved into them, but his basic philosophy is that he wants everyone in a circle, and for 3 hours, they're going to go through this meditation and listening to the puja, all for one reason. And that's to basically have everybody vibrating on the same length,
Yes.
thinking in the same way, feeling the same way. So when they send out that intention, it's just this one hive mind,
Yes.
right? I think that pain that you experience when you're feeling other people's pain is actually you physically connecting with them.
Yes.
So it's not for you to give like sympathy or to hold space for them in that respect. I think that you guys have become so skilled in connecting with other people that you're literally merging back
Yes.
into them.
yeah. So
They're becoming you and you're becoming them for that moment of time.
I think you're spot on, and the benefit of it is that because essentially if we're holding space, which is very similar, it's a circle, you're trying to harmonize the group because the power of the group as a collective is so
Correct.
much stronger than the individual.
Yes.
And the benefit is when we step into it, we turn to each other and I go, I feel it here, here, here in my field, and I know it needs to be moved from the group as a collective. We're not operating on an individual level. Because we're beyond that. We start to feel, at this point, Tanya, we talk all the time like, what's that thing I always say? None of us are well until
The one that you
I can't get it right. None of us are well until all of us are well.
no, yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
The point is this: is that
Oneness.
exactly.
It's a bitch.
Exactly. Oneness.
It's a bitch in a world where 50% of the population is sick.
Yes.
Exactly. And a lot of then our practices have evolved to like protection and stuff like that. And I digress.
You said that you're also a contactee.
Yes.
So what have your experiences been as a extraterrestrial contactee?
It's such a crazy question, right?
It seems like if it's us, it's
Not
not.
on this show.
You've actually
Welcome
had
to Acid for Squares.
yeah.
Yeah. So basically, I had a really weird experience. a couple of years ago. So I'm filming this show. It's called Beyond the Grave. It was about life after death. And I'd been meeting with NDEs, near-death experiences. And it's so crazy that there's this common denominator with all near-death experiences that when they die, they see the white light, they go through the tunnel, they do have all the memories. You know, we've all heard of all this sort of stuff, right? But what a lot of people don't know is that everyone that's had an NDE comes back with a new magical power, okay? They come back with something extra. While they're up there, they basically figure out what their life purpose is. Like it's just given to them on a platter. This is your life purpose. This is what you're meant to do. They're given a choice. Do you want to stay here and learn that and roll that out in your next life, or do you want to have that gift now and have at it in the one you were in before? And so if they choose to come back, and it is always a choice, you don't have a near-death experience and magically just come back. Like you've said, nah, not ready. Please send me back. So I'm interviewing this woman. And I'm like, so what's your sixth sense? And she's like, well, I'm able to unlock things. And I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean? And she goes, well, you know, I can take all the blockages that you have. So if you like have fear, I can remove that. And if you have, you know, like things that are holding you back from success, I can help you with that. And she's like, what's holding you back? And I'm like, well, I make movies about ETs and I want to have face-to-face contact with an ET, but it's never happened to me before. I think it's because I'm really afraid. Like I'm shit scared of opening my eyes and seeing a grey, right? Terrifies me, the concept. So she's like, okay, God knows what she did, all this sort of stuff. And that was it. Then I went on with the rest of my day, interviewed her, interviewed someone else, blah, 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 blah. That night, I'm in a hotel. We filmed in a hotel, the Chamberlain in West Hollywood, which is very haunted and has a lot of paranormal activity if you're ever interested in going on a ghost hunt.
Cool, definitely.
Anyway, I go to bed and then I wake up to the sound of the carbon monoxide alarm going off. And I'm just like, what the hell is going on? There's no one in my room. I go to look over at the clock to see what time it is and I can't move my head. I can move my eyes though. So I look over and I'm just like, holy shit. So it's like 222. I'm like, this is crazy. And then I start feeling this weird vibration like all over my body. So my whole body just is activated, right? I can just feel every single part of me. Then I start feeling this pull, like this pulling sensation all over my body. So in every single part, in the same pressure everywhere, and this pulling feeling, and like I'm being pulled out of the bed. And so I'm just like, okay, this is strange. You know,
Whoa.
What is going on? And I just start instinctively pushing back into the bed, pushing down as much as I can, and I can feel it pulling me. And then straight away I'm like, it's happening. This is it, right? So using my mind, because I can't move my mouth, I'm like, are you trying to take me? And they're like, yes. I'm like, okay, but why do you need to take me? And they're like, because we need to bring you up here and we need to show you things. And you're going to operate from here now, like up here. And I'm like, can I come back? And they're like, no. And I'm like, why not? And they're like, where we're taking you, your body will change so much that you won't be able to like come back and like exist here.
My God.
And so I'm just like, well, I'm not down for that. I've got kids, right? And they're like, well, you know, it doesn't matter. This is more important than that. And I'm like, well, no, you know. So I had this, you know, this whole conversation back and forth. And then they're like, are you sure? And I'm like, I am sure. I don't want to come. I'm like, no. That's what I said. And then instantly it stopped. I could move. I look over at the clock. It felt like that went on for like 20 minutes. Like it just went on. It wouldn't stop. It was like this argument almost. Just like, no, I'm not going. Yeah, you are. No, I'm not. You know, like a weirdo in my head. Anyway, it stops. I can move. I look over at the clock. Still 222.
Whoa.
I've got a video of it. I'll show you in a sec. And I'm sitting there in the dark, in silence. I'm like, what the fuck just happened, right?
Whoa.
They basically said to me that they want me to be somebody that will help the world prepare for contact.
Of course. Yeah.
And they wanted to give me intel and information and knowledge on when and where and how they're going to come and what's going to happen and everything like that. And then what they were going to do was allow me to be able to use telepathy to talk to people I know like you and give you that information. But I'd be giving it to you in a way that you would feel like it was a dream, kind of like Inception. You know, so you'd go to bed at night, I'd give you that information. You wake up in the morning, you'd have the information, but you know, they wanted me to be the person to cherry pick the people that would be able to deliver the message, because you could go and give the message to like some, you know, like like hillbilly or something like that in the middle of bumfuck nowhere that has no friends that everyone hates, right? Useless giving them the message.
Yeah.
They're going to walk down to the town hall, share it with everybody, and everyone's going to be like, you know,
Bill the crazy guy.
they seem to think that I'd be able to pick the right people
This is very interesting.
share the message.
Because it's very interesting because there's a lot of like mythos and lore, like someone like Thoth, the Egyptian god, and it's a god of writing.
Right.
And there's a long history in mythology of essentially whatever beings communicating with writers and artists. Actually, the artist archetype itself is synonymous with the shamanic archetype. So the shaman of a tribal structure, the person who's leaving the tribe and discovering perhaps plant medicine and communing with the divine, they then come back to the tribe and they make art and song and dance and to communicate this frequency of higher knowledge, and it's the same exact archetype shamanically. So the idea of artists being communicated with to put into their art this information is a story as old as time.
Right.
They're the best ones to communicate the message because art is how we learn from storytelling.
Right. And also I think, you know, like having, like being able to pick somebody that's going to be compelling and interesting and convincing, you know? And so like that was kind of what they were telling me. But since then, I've dedicated my life to doing just that, but I'm just doing it here.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, you guys are part of that whole story, you know, and that's why I'm so interested in you guys.
Same.
You know?
Well, same. We're
like
going
drawn to you and so interested in you.
Well, same.
You're
It's
sweet.
the same thing because we're all
Right.
experiencing the same thing and trying to convey
Yeah.
the message. So we all have the same purpose and the same goals in mind.
All we're doing is preparing humanity for contact.
And that's why, and that's really the central theme of what we're talking about is how contact is already transpiring and the ways it transpires and the way the protocols are initiated, how people can initiate it themselves.
Yeah.
And Tanya, we actually had a very similar experience with missing time that one night, and the same thing with 11/11.
It was so wild. We were literally sitting on the couch and we were talking, and then all of a sudden, both of us, our minds went blank, and we were staring at each other, and we're like, "What were we just talking about?" And it took us like 5 minutes to figure out what we were talking about. And then we both scream. We go, "Oh my God. We were talking about how ETs make you forget when they like abduct you or whatever. They make you
Wow.
forget what's going on and missing lapse of time." So we freak out. We run into the kitchen and the oven is blinking 11:11. And
It was like 2 or 3 in the morning.
we realized later it was like 2:30 in the morning. So there was a missing lapse in time, and it also wasn't 11:11. So there's no reason that the oven should be blinking that. And so it was just
Well, 11/11, you know, like lots of people have like different ideas for what that means.
Yeah.
What resonates with me the most is I feel like it activates the reticular activation system actually. But you know, 11/11 is them, whoever they are, saying, "Pay attention right now."
Yeah.
Pay attention right now to what's happening around you and what you're hearing and what you're thinking, because what you're thinking in this exact moment, that's your truth.
it means something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always on an individual level what it means to the individual person, and everyone has it's 11/11, it's 2/22, it's 4/4/4.
Yeah.
And this is always something that we have a teacher who when she knows a friend is about to cross over, she'll be like, pick your number.
Yeah.
Pick your song, pick
Like
your
talk to them
animal
and
spirit.
tell them, yeah.
Yeah.
So we
So
have
you can recognize it. I
right.
love that.
So and this is how spirit communicates with the human world. It's through symbolism.
Yeah.
And it's because symbols mean something specifically to the individual, and it transcends language. Language is very limited and fallible. We're all perpetrators of semantic confusion.
And I mean, like our minds, or I guess for the most part, we believe and they believe that our minds aren't ready for that integration to happen in a conscious level. But on a subconscious level, they know that we're ready to start communicating with them. And the reason for that is if you think about your dreams that occur in the subconscious, they're much more wild, much more crazy. You're like, your absolute best self jumping through clouds and running around and doing crazy shit, right? And so that's a plane that they feel comfortable to make contact with us on, and they make contact with us all the time. Now, let me ask you a question. Is your conscious any less or more real than your subconscious, or are they both just as real as each other? Are the thoughts that we have right now just as real as the thoughts we have when we're asleep? They are, right?
Right.
So this is what's happening. Contact is happening with all of us every day. You know how many of us channeled our loved ones last night when we were asleep? Our passed over loved ones.
Yeah.
Half the population of the world probably dreamt about someone that's passed, right? So there is a plane where we do communicate with people from, that have passed over. There is a plane where we communicate with extraterrestrials in our dreams. It happens all the time. A dream isn't just some weird thing that we do when we sleep. It's our other life. Yeah. It's the other part of ourself. It's the other plane. It's the other part of existence. Contact is happening all the time. It's happening every second. It's just we seem to demand that it happens in the conscious. But why?
Yeah.
Now, so because you have interviewed so many contactees and abductees, have you found any sort of repeating patterns with these people that they're contacting a specific kind of person, maybe with how their personality is, their energy, life events, anything like that?
The biggest thing that I found, and this isn't every single contactee, this is an enormous amount of them, right? A large percentage, dare I say 95%.
Okay.
Have all been victims of childhood trauma.
Oh.
Okay, so that could be sex abuse, that could be just verbal abuse from a parent. It could be a car accident that really, substantially injured them and involved them being in hospital for a long period of time. But some measure of trauma that is the type of trauma that you carry with you forever, right? For the people I've interviewed, it's been unanimous.
Wow.
But I'm sure that there's some that haven't experienced that. I mean, I'm a victim of child trauma myself. When I was 9, I was molested. So, I think that's okay. I'll come to terms with it.
What do you think that means, though, that somebody that experiences childhood trauma is able to perceive more?
Once you've experienced trauma, it changes you. Like, you went through something really hard and you survived, right? So that when faced with something horrific, you'll probably get through it and you'll probably be okay. Okay? But the first time that trauma occurred for you, it was shocking. It took you weeks to recover from that. Not that you ever recover from it, but, it took you weeks to accept it, right? I believe that they take people that are victims of trauma because they're going to be able to accept what's happening to them easier. I'll give you an analogy. If a child was molested for several years of their life, the first few times they fight, but after a while they become docile. They develop coping mechanisms so that they can go to their happy place and, do whatever it is they need to do to get through that situation. They've been taught how to handle extreme trauma, right? What's abduction? What's alien abduction?
Right.
Right. But if you've got the tools... Unfortunately, I have the tools, right, to deal with something like that.
This is very interesting.
That's my theory.
Well, and you have an advanced degree in psychology.
Yeah.
So this is interesting because I think a reductionist, cynical person would say, "Oh, obviously these are traumatized people, and that reduces their credibility."
Yeah.
I think another person can make an argument that the majority of people have childhood trauma, over 50%. But from our perspective on this is very interesting. Trauma is fundamental to the shamanic path. So in shamanism, there are 2 paths on the tree. One is the path of power, and the other is the medicine path. The path of power is essentially someone chooses power. Typically, they think, I'm going to get the power and use it for good, but somewhere along their path, the end justifies the means and they become the problem. They are corrupted by it, okay? The medicine path, they say before you come here that you essentially agree to a trauma, to experience a trauma, and that trauma, that pain of the world that you are taking on, you learn to heal it, and that is your initiation as a medicine person, as a healer.
And it's your medicine in the world.
Yeah,
wow.
So
I did not know that.
The ubiquity of trauma, of experiencing trauma and having to heal it, is essentially to the shamanic lineage, is essentially that is your spiritual initiation to a path as a healer, in healing your own trauma first. So that's very interesting.
Because that's always how we learn, right? We learn through other people's stories and how they healed themselves, and that becomes your medicine. Because if you deal with something really traumatic and you heal it, and then you're able to speak about it publicly, then you help everybody else who's dealt with the same thing. And so that is the shamanic path, and that is the medicine. That's why we are the medicine.
You're actually giving me like so many chills.
I think this is a really interesting connective tissue we've just made, because this quote unquote shaman, healer, right? And a healer is only someone who's healed themselves and then tries to share the tools, right? This person, this archetype, in what we found is synonymous with the channel. This is something that I think that we are most interested in communicating to the world in terms of what the channel is, because the channel is essentially the original traditional form of first contact that has happened. It's an individual being used as an antenna and inhabited, and so to speak, to communicate as a vessel these teachings of a higher plane from higher planes of existence.
Right.
Whether you want to call them ETs or angels or whatever it is, your ancestors, so be it. This is a form of contact that has been happening for a long time, but society has treated these people like loons, treated them like they're crazy, ostracized them, excommunicated them, has not created a space for them in the cultural consciousness. These people who were once regarded as priests and sages and conduits for the other world have been relegated to a realm of schizophrenia and institutionalization and have been medicated largely.
Right.
Now, given the rise of information and this time of disclosure and everything that's happening, we are in a time where we can reframe how we communicate the channel. And that's something that you have done in your most recent movie, right?
Yeah.
Interview with the Extraterrestrial, correct? Can you speak about your studies of a channel and also your work making a film about one of the greatest channels we know of, Darryl Anka, who channels a being called Bashar? Can you speak on this?
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, after spending time with not only Darryl, but a couple of other people that are true channels, we actually also call them trance mediums. And what that means, just for people at home that don't really, really, really know what a channel is it's a human being that has made telepathic contact with another being, be it a dead person, like a spirit, or an extraterrestrial, or some other entity that does not have a body. They got something to say, but they don't have the ability to say it because air cannot speak. Okay? And the stuff of spirit does not have a voice, does not have vocal cords. So what a channel is a channel is a body and consciousness. The consciousness decides to loan out its body to another consciousness. So the consciousness of Serena, for example, would say, I'm going to take a back seat now. I'm going to go and chill over here near the amygdala and, think about Egyptians and stuff like that. And I'm going to give you an hour. And you, other consciousness, can come into my vessel and use my body to say and do whatever it is that you like. When a channeling occurs, the owner of the body rarely remembers anything about it at all. They truly are saying, I'm jumping out of the robot for a bit. You can jump into the robot and power it. And they really just leave. And so that's what it is. Being a channel is renting out your body to a spirit or another being so that they can communicate. Because unfortunately, for the most part, human beings can only hear messages by listening to the sound of my voice or by looking at me. Telepathy, unfortunately, is something that we can all do, but we don't really know how, right? So it was really interesting spending time with Darryl. Like, I first became aware of him. My ex, Evan, had sent me a video of him. He's like, what do you think about this? And I was just like, holy shit. Like, is this guy for real? Like, all of a sudden, he, starts twitching and doing all this weird stuff. And then next minute, he's like this extraterrestrial. And you can ask him all of these otherworldly questions, and he has all the answers to everything. So I'm thinking, this is cool. And I was sitting at home one night, and my friend Jimmy Church had like posted on his Facebook. He'd posted that Darryl, this guy, was going to be at the Conscious Life Expo, and so I rang up Jimmy, and I'm like, Jimmy, can you hook me up? Like what's going on here? And Jimmy was the MC of the event. He's literally like, girl, come meet me out at the entrance. I got you.
Sounds like Jimmy.
Right? Yeah. And I thought it was just going to be like a seat at the back of the auditorium. You know, he'll put a little seat for me right at the back and let me in. Nah. Front row, and he's like, Serena, this is Darryl. I'm like, what? And then he does his thing, and I'm just sitting there for like an hour, like watching this guy channel this ET. And then afterwards, of course, Jimmy's like, hey, come and meet him. And straight away, I'm just like, I just cut to the chase. I'm like, bruh, I need to make a documentary about you. Are you in? And he's like, I don't normally do documentaries, but sure.
It's amazing, by the way.
Yeah. And like, shout out to Jimmy Church. Like, this movie wouldn't be happening without him.
The day this episode drops is the day that this documentary drops.
Yes.
So look
October 7th.
Look for it.
I'm so excited to
Interview
share it
with
with
an
the world.
extraterrestrial.
Yeah. So basically, you know, like I'd met Darryl, thought he was really cool. He'd agreed to do a documentary with me. When I pitched him, I didn't even know what the documentary was about. It was just like, you're fucking cool. I want to do something with you.
Like, I'll figure it out.
Right. So anyway, that night, go to bed. And as usual, most of my ideas for movies and stuff come to me in dreams.
Oh, wow.
And in my dream, I'm watching Interview with a Vampire. And how the movie begins is Christian Slater is sitting there next to his typewriter, and there's vampires there. And the vampire Lestat basically says, hey, I'm going to, you know, share my entire story with you. Do you want to hear it? And the whole movie is about this interview with this vampire. And the vampire decides to like give away all the secrets of vampireness and the riddles of the universe. So I see that vision in my mind, and then I wake up and I literally roll over and look at Bear, and I'm just like, interview with the extraterrestrial. He's like, what? And I'm like, that's the next movie. And he's like, okay. But so basically, you know, like with Darryl, he's so believable, but I didn't know if I believed him. So I thought what I wanted to do with this movie was set off on a journey to potentially debunk him, right? This guy's walking around acting like he's a fucking extraterrestrial and knows all the answers, all the riddles to the universe. I don't know if I believe that that's true. So I interviewed him. I interviewed his wife, interviewed his business partner, interviewed Caroline Corey and Paul Hynek. Paul Hynek, who is the king of debunking anyone that's talking shit about aliens. Sarah Breskman Cosme, who does regressional hypnotherapy, and all of them, you know, had their thoughts on whether or not you could channel and whether or not it was real. And for the most part, it became very evident to me that people are channeling all the time.
Yeah.
If you meet anyone that's a medium or a clairvoyant or a psychic, they're channeling. So if you can channel dead people, why can't you channel an ET, right?
Yeah.
So I went around and I asked hundreds of different people to give me questions that I could go and ask this extraterrestrial, because I thought if I got the opportunity to sit down with an ET, I'm not just going to squander that and ask my own questions. I wanted to hear what everybody wanted to know. So I did that, and then I sat down with him, and he became Bashar, or let Bashar in, and we talked for about an hour and a half.
The questions you ask are so incredible. I was telling Serena this earlier, but when I watched the movie, for some reason, I was like, oh man, this would be a great question to ask. This would be a great question to ask. And she asked every single one of those questions. I was like, damn, Serena.
Yeah, but I guess it's because all of us, you know, deep inside have the same questions. Who are we? Where did we come from?
Yeah.
What is going on? What is our purpose? You know, and how can we live a better life? And what happens after this life? Yeah. I mean, we all have these crazy unanswered questions, which still just blows my mind. How do we know so little about ourselves?
Yeah, I think it's because the reason why I was so blown away with your questions is because I'm so used to seeing the clips of him at conferences where people come up and ask the questions, and it's kind of the same thing about their like personal life or about relationships or emotions or something like that. And it's just like, oh, this question again. Like I've heard those answers so many times.
Tell me what's buried.
Yes.
Because like one thing, like I'm really into archaeology and stuff, right? Yeah. The next movie I'm making is called Secrets of the Sphinx, and we're going to go to Egypt, and you guys should come. It's going to be a wild fucking
okay,
We'd like to go to Egypt.
So good. I'll tell you the synopsis later, but you guys are going to be like, take me. Anyway, but I'm really into archaeology. Like I can't believe that you can go into a desert and dig for a while and pull up something that was buried like 5,000 years ago.
Or
and
more.
Exactly. And like, if that's what there, what's there?
Yes.
And what's there?
We were in Belize and we went to the pyramids in Belize, the Mayan temples, right? It was wild because we asked them, we were like, well, you know, is there more around here? If there's all these different structures, are there more? And they're like, oh, absolutely. There's tons. The problem is there's not enough money to excavate and like actually pull these out. He's like, oh yeah, right over there. There's another building over there, but we can't move them out. And I'm like, holy shit, like, can't we just use LiDAR and like just like actually graph and see what's going on?
You know how close we are to actually us doing that? Like the technology's catching up.
Oh,
like,
good.
All those
Thank
riddles,
God.
all the riddles are about to be revealed.
Shit's about to get real.
But you know, like I wanted to know. I'm like, is there stuff that we haven't discovered, like extraterrestrial stuff, like another crashed craft? And he's like, forget about a craft. There's a whole, you know, cities, you know. Was Atlantis real? Yes. And I said to him, I'm going to Egypt. I want to go and discover something that hasn't been discovered, like an extraterrestrial artifact. Can you tell me where one is? And he did.
What did he say?
My God.
Coordinates.
Really?
Well, it's going to be for her documentary. She can't tell us.
Right?
All right, let's go.
So,
we're going to Egypt with you.
Yeah, I know. And like, I'm telling you, if I go there and we dig up something, I'm going to be gagged. Like, that's going to be like so crazy.
Oh my God.
But I don't know. Like, making this movie was incredible for me because it really made me feel as though I was face to face with an extraterrestrial. Like, Darryl is over 70 years of age. 70 years young. But, you know, my dad's the same age as Darryl, right?
Oh,
my
wow.
dad is a metallurgist. He's a scientist. He's the smartest person I know. He's my idol. I fucking love and worship him. But he is declining. His mind is declining a little bit. He does forget things because he's older, you know? It does take him longer to, like, answer a mathematical equation. When he was 40, if you asked him what, you know, like, pi was, he... Now it's like pi. Okay, let me think about that. Oh, it's this, right? You know, older people just slow down a little bit. Not Darryl. I'm rapid firing questions to him about what's the Fibonacci code and what is this and what is that and tell me the riddles of the universe. And for an hour and a half, he just sat there and was like, no hesitation ever. No stumbling his speech ever. He didn't stumble one word. He didn't ask me to stop the interview for a second. Ever. Could you do that for an hour and a half? Could you sit there and have me ask you questions for an hour and a half without moving a muscle, just like this, for an hour and a half? The most technical questions, without breaking a sweat, without stumbling your speech once.
Absolutely.
Now you're 70.
Yeah.
There's no way.
I mean, Darryl's amazing. He's by far the best channel that I've
my
ever
God.
seen.
His
He's like
information
Edgar
is so
Cayce.
sad.
I feel like it's Edgar Cayce level.
That alone, that's why I was convinced that this guy was channeling something, like hopefully an extraterrestrial, but whatever was going on, it wasn't him. And it's so crazy too, because afterward he comes back, right? We show it in the movie. He comes back and I'm like, oh my God, when you said this, and he's just like, what did I say? Like, I don't remember anything.
He totally steps aside.
Yeah. And it was so crazy. Like we're friends now, you know, we talk a bit here and there and he's no recollection.
And
none.
You have a neuroscientist
Zero.
come on and write in your doc, a neuroscientist measures his states of consciousness. And doesn't she say it's like equivalent to a monk who'd been meditating in a cave for 30 years?
Exactly. Like it's where, like he just clears his mind. So there have been situations where he's been neuroscientist has hooked him up with all the little electrodes and things like that. And he's channeling Bashar, but his brain activity is just...
That's right, doesn't it?
Wow.
Isn't the brain actually show that his like the personality area is completely gone? Like he just leaves.
Yeah.
And he's in a gamma state.
Firing,
yeah.
But it's not what fires when you're sitting there and you're just talking normally. Like it's incredible. He is incredible. It's such a gift. And the movie is great because like a lot of people get to see, like you can go on YouTube, watch Bashar channel, watch it.
Yeah.
Life-changing information. But what you don't see is his origin story, like how it all happened. Like he was just some normal guy. Like he worked in Hollywood before they had CGI.
He did models.
Yeah, he did all the models,
Yeah.
and he's such an incredible artist. Like he drew the extraterrestrial.
Yeah.
I'm like, can you explain what he looks like? He goes, let me show you. And he just sat there, and it was like watching like Leonardo da Vinci. Like, and he's like, here you go, you can have that. What?
So what I think's most interesting
cool.
about your doc is that it answers the conundrum that's been previously stated around contactees versus abductees.
Right.
And the thing with, so we've all said that we identify after hearing what you've just laid out
Thanks,
as
Serena.
contactees. And for us, it is a spiritual experience. It is divine. It is sacred.
Yeah.
It is not some weird thing. It is sacred. You're breaking through to something. It's the most beautiful experience we've ever. That's why we explore
can be scary,
this. It's very scary at first, but on the other side of it, it's nothing's more beautiful, and the messages are so positive.
Messages are so positive and beautiful.
But this is the interesting thing, right? We talk about contactee. The abductee is very different.
Yeah.
You know, you're talking about essentially being taken, seemingly, which against these people's will.
Yep.
Having DNA extracted, semen taken, eggs taken,
Blood, skin, bone,
all of this.
all of it.
And something that you didn't mention, but it's known as phantom pregnancy, which is something you can find in medical textbooks. These women who have these abduction experiences are pregnant, virgin births.
I have one for your show as well.
Okay,
we'll
amazing.
Talk about it after.
We'd love
you
to interview them.
have to.
Well, so these quote unquote virgin births, what happens is they'll be pregnant for 6, 7, 8 months, and then all of a sudden they'll wake up and the fetus will be gone, it'll be taken. And the doctors will examine the patient and there will be no sign of surgery or anything, and they will be labeled as phantom pregnancy syndrome, right? So this phenomenon known as abduction, Bashar explains in your doc.
He does.
He says that essentially what he is channeling is human from a parallel timeline where humans get so far in their technological advancement that they begin to merge with technology, which is where we all know we're heading with transhumanism. And in merging with technology, they essentially become infertile and they lose their ability to
reproduce.
So they then begin to clone themselves. And through this infertility, due to transhumanism and this cloning, they become disconnected from their empathy, their emotions, their heart, what one might call a soul. And essentially that they begin a protocol, these humans, of phasing into a parallel timeline of Earth to extract DNA and genetic information, egg, semen, to then to merge themselves with us to regain their ability to give birth and to reconnect with their emotional intelligence, which explains the abduction phenomenon. It explains the grays. It really is a missing piece of the phenomenon. So when we heard that in your documentary, we were like, well, that's the missing piece of the puzzle right now, because our experiences are very spiritual and beautiful.
They are, unless you're with the Greys, though, because the Greys are very like no emotion to the point, doing the job or whatever.
Who you're describing is the Greys. So that's the race that he's talking about.
Yes, but he says he's channeling the hybrid. Bashar is the hybrid race, and that they're doing
that comes after
gray and
human.
Right. And they say as a reciprocity for what they did, because they understand that they traumatized us in what they did, they are trying to now give back to us because they've taken from us by making contact and giving information and helping us avoid the future that they went down. Right. Which gives me chills to talk about. It is the missing piece of the puzzle.
Well, and it's interesting hearing that and then interviewing abductees and hearing about their experiences, because one thing that's so weird for me, because backtrack a little bit. So I decided to make a series called The Abductees, right? And all the movies that I've ever made, there's always someone in there that's had this abduction experience. But it was when I made the series that so many commonalities, so many common denominators started to come out, because you're seeing these people one after the other, after the other, after the other, right? And so you're able to put 2 and 2 together easier. And all of them had the same experience. This is the weird thing. So not vague. It's not like, oh, yeah, I was lifted out of my house and then I opened my eyes and there were aliens and it was really scary. Then I was back in my bed. Nah. Like their recollection when it finally comes is so clear. And when they tell you the story, you can just see it so clearly. And all of them have very similar things. So they go up onto a craft. The craft is organic, but then it's also technological at the same time. So imagine this room, but those walls are breathing.
It's like sentient. It's a sentient craft.
That's right.
Yeah.
And as they walk through corridors, because they're usually flanked by two of the beings that you talked about, the mantis beings, one on either side of them, usually touching them and guiding them. And they walk through the craft. And there's all very different crafts, but they're all described as organic and technological. Some of them are white and some of them are kind of skin colored, which is kind of gross, but wow. I don't want to be in a skin colored, organic, breathing, sentient craft. I don't know. I don't want it. Good. Just put me in like the white, sterile thing. Anyway, so they're walking around and even the ground underneath them is not spongy, but it just gives. It's not like metal or concrete. And as they walk by, there's rooms on all different sides, and they're not operation rooms. It's like they're literally allowed into the main craft. The crafts are huge, right? And that, you know, as they go past rooms, you know, when you're just approaching a door and you're just starting to look through it, so you can just kind of see something going on in there, and then they'll close. So quite often, like that, there's this feeling that no, you're not allowed to look at that. No, you're not allowed to look at that. But as they're walking past other doors, if there's something in there that's not, you know, an issue or just something simple, that door will remain open. Then they normally come to an area where there's going to be some sort of procedure done to them, and they're kind of hovered over onto it. So imagine, I'm saying they're walking, but they're kind of just like floating and walking along, you know? So like they're upright, but they're kind of off the ground maybe and just kind of, you know, there's no steps.
The conveyor belt.
Right.
We've called it.
That's what you call it. Right. And then they kind of like all like in the same way, they kind of just like put onto the bed. So they're lifted, but they're not lifted. It's just they're like, imagine your hands are there and you're lifted, but there's no sort of touch. Then they're on it. They usually explain that there's going to be a procedure that's going to be done to them. They're not going to feel it. It's not going to hurt. They're not going to remember it. And then they're thanked, you know, like depending on the being. But for the most part, they're thanked. And it's not usually like, oh, my God, we love you so much. Thank you for your DNA. It's not like that. It's more you are helping the human race or you are helping our race. The information you're given makes you feel like, oh, okay, this is going to suck, but like I'm going to help people. Then they do the procedures. You're fully awake for them, but you don't feel them. Some people say, like, you know, like Whitley Strieber, who was the muse of that movie Communion, when I sat down with him, he did feel it. He felt every single thing that happened to him. And then afterward, for months and years, he really suffered a lot of physical trauma from what they had done to him. But for the most part, people say that they don't feel anything when it's happening. But when they go home, they feel it. So when they wake up the next day, they feel like they've been in a car accident. Oh, wow. So nothing's broken. You know, there may be no bruises or marks on their body, but they feel it. You know, or like one woman described it as when you're at the gym and you've worked out really hard, and then the next day you kind of feel it. Yeah. Sometimes implants are left in the body. People believe that they're tracking devices. I tend to kind of believe it in a way as well, because the same people get abducted throughout their lifetimes, and they move around. They move around because they don't want the extraterrestrials to know where they live anymore. But
interesting.
So I have this thing that happened to me when I was about 20 years old. Me and my friend Kirsten were driving from Ventura up to San Francisco, or actually not to San Francisco. We were going to the Bay Area. And so we were driving along and we saw a sign that said like 246 miles to San Francisco. And we jokingly were like, oh, should we say screw seeing our families and just go to San Francisco instead? And we were laughing, kept driving for a little bit. Then all of a sudden, it felt like a downed power line. I don't know how to explain it. Like there was this energy, this very crackly sort of energy. And we were like, what just happened? What was that? And we were both looking at each other like, you felt that, right? What just happened? And we're like, okay. So we keep driving, totally like freaked out by the energy we just felt. And then maybe like 5 minutes down the road, we passed the exact same sign. It says 246 miles to San Francisco. And we're like, no. We passed that. We drove past it. What's going on? We were freaking out, right? So I went and visited my parents, and when I got back to my house in Ventura, I had gotten out of the shower and I was putting like lotion on, and I felt something sharp in my lower back. And I was like, what is that? And I look, and there's literally a black triangle piece in my lower back. And I mean, when I met Cody, the first time we actually hung out, I was like, look at I have like an alien chip. Our friends Danielle and Eric, the same thing. The first time I met them, I was like, do you want to feel the alien chip?
Yeah.
Because I didn't actually know what had happened and I hadn't told anybody about it. But years later, I found this guy who used to be a photographer for the Rolling Stone magazine. And he owned this restaurant. And I was telling the guys about this abduction, or not this abduction, but this missing piece of time. And they're like, oh my God, wait, you have to meet this guy. And they bring him out of the kitchen. And he's like, has a newspaper that he puts out quarterly, and it's all about UFOs and abductions. And he talks about the placement of chips, and it's literally the exact same spot.
Wow.
There were like 3 locations that they're normally in, and one was there. And I was like, oh, Jesus.
There it is.
So someday I have to go get it. Like, I've gone to doctors and stuff, and they're like, I don't know what it is, but
Yeah, and
Wow.
I need to get something
You have
done.
to show me. I want to see.
why don't you tell us about your streaming platform Spark
Yeah.
that is currently planned to be launched on 11/11?
Launched on 11/11. It's super exciting. So basically, you know, I have been a subscriber to Gaia for a long time, and Gaia is an amazing platform. If anyone ever wants to go and get spiritual content, learn about UFOs and ET and all that sort of stuff, Gaia is so great. But one thing that I have found as I've got deeper into this world and become friends with you and so many other cool people is that I feel like Gaia's offering is much more spirituality based and bohemian and sort of hippie sort of style, which is cool, but not for me.
I mean, not for us either.
No, well, I mean,
Yeah, we
there
get
is
it.
the people that are coming forward and are starting to be part of this amazing group that we have that are creating this content are all intelligent scientists and rock stars and cool people. So what we decided is that we wanted to make the MTV version of Gaia, and that is Spark. So Spark's mantra is question everything. And so the content that we have on Spark is just that. It's like everything you've seen, everything you've heard, everything that's been shoved down your throat since you were brought into this beautiful world, out of your mother's womb, kicking and screaming. Could be true, but it could also be a lie. So all of the content that we have on Spark is all just about that quest that all of us are on, and that is for truth, for enlightenment, and for uncovering what is still unknown. Because that's one of the great things about being human, right? Like we are born into a puzzle that we're not even close to figuring out. But every day, if we ask lots of questions and we peel the layers away, we get closer to figuring out who we are and where we come from. And so that's what Spark's all about. So we have all of the big blockbuster movies from all of the most amazing producers like Dr. Stephen Greer, Jeremy Corbell, all of those, the Cousins brothers, people like that. But then we're creating a lot of original content. Acid for Squares is going to be on Spark, which is so cool. And I guess what I'm trying to do with the platform that's a little bit different from Gaia is I want the most recent, most up-to-date information to be presented on that site quickly and efficiently and every single day, which means that if something else is disclosed by the government, we have someone go and make a documentary about it in a couple of weeks and it's available for everybody to see. UFO sightings that are happening every single day, let's have them put onto the site as they happen so that we get up to the minute breaking news and information about all of the cool things that are happening in this world. If someone has an abduction experience, let's not learn about it 27 years later in a documentary. Let's get them onto a show and interview them immediately and triage them and see how they're feeling, deal with it like live on air so that people can like really experience it. We just want, instead of it being an us and them, which is what content has been historically, here's a documentary, here's a viewer sitting at home learning about it months later. We want to make that connection much, much shorter, so people can actually be part of the discovery rather than just sitting back and watching it and hearing it from other people.
Amazing.
So that's Spark.
Amazing.
It's very important.
I love that.
SparkTV.co.
I love that. I love everything about that. And especially, you're talking about sort of like the rebranding of this information. I don't know anything more fucking badass and radical, especially when it comes to all of this. It's been subjugated.
Yeah.
These are the heretics. These are the anarchists. These are the people who've been killed since for as long as recorded history.
Right. But now they're being celebrated.
Exactly.
Like the abductees and the contactees of this world that have been the pariahs are about to become the rock stars, because the second that that contact is confirmed, be it through our government or through a mass sighting or just through enough of us finally coming together and saying they're real, we've seen them, those people that have been abducted and have had one-on-one time with extraterrestrial beings are going to become the most interesting, most coveted people in the whole world.
Okay, so I think that's interesting that you think that, because I feel like through the lens of the Abrahamic traditions, they view it as demons.
I mean, the majority of our comments section is just like, yo, talking to demons.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't, and that's the majority of the
Then
world.
how come they're not hurting us then? Like they're like trying to help us.
Or giving us messages of peace and how to help ourselves and heal ourselves and come together. Like,
why didn't they just steal all our shit and kill us?
No, it's definitely not demonic, but I just think hearing you say like, nah, like these people are going to be celebrated, I'm like, well, you know, I hope so.
Well, imagine this, and we can close on this. Imagine this, a UFO does appear on the White House lawn and there is an announcement that we're not alone. Who are we going to go to find out more about these extraterrestrial beings? Who better than the people that have spent time with them, you know? And like, honestly, as someone that's spent time with, like I said, several hundred abductees now, they're all so battered and broken and bruised, not by the ETs, but by society, you know, hiding in the shadows, filled with shame, getting no help from psychologists or doctors or anybody in the medical profession to deal with their trauma. I can't wait for the day they get vindicated.
Same.
Yes.
I can't wait for them to be sitting down with their families who didn't believe them, and they just walk in Sunday lunch and they're like, I fucking told you! I told you! Right?
Me too.
Yes,
Me too.
absolutely.
Us
Bring
too.
that on.
Inshallah.
Okay, so we'll go out on that note. Serena DC interview with the extraterrestrial.
SparkTV.co,
Yep.
which comes out on 11/11.
Yes.
And please just
Join us.
Check out all of her work. Follow her across all social media platforms. You can check out all the amazing movies. One of her movies just won Cannes. You just sent this to us. This one. What's this one called?
Beyond the Grave.
Beyond the Grave. Okay, we have to check out this one. Great job with this movie, Serena. We love you, sis.
Yeah,
I
we
love you guys so
much.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks for just helping us in all the ways you do and inviting us to be a part of Spark. And it's an honor and a privilege. And onward and upward we go together. And that's it for this episode of Ask for Squares. Follow, like, subscribe. You know what to do. Be well. Peace.